So in Denmark, they have this word called hygge. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. We don't really have anything quite like it in the UK, but it's a word that sort of encapsulates the complete feeling of coziness and warmth and fulfillment. I've never really had an automotive experience that encapsulates that feeling. Until now. Well, this is hygge on wheels. It's funny from the outside, this thing looks like it was designed for hunting dinosaurs, and yet on the inside, it's this beautiful, refined, soft, dare I say it with Apple CarPlay, sophisticated environment. It just gives you a sense of fulfillment using this thing in adverse conditions. And boy, have we got adversity today, because we're in the Scottish Highlands, the beginning of January. It can't decide if it should hit us with a tornado, a snowstorm, or torrential rain. And so far, we've almost had all three. And yet inside here, I'm getting this great sense of joy, of power, of gratefulness. I know that's a strange thing, but when I look out at the land before me, it's this beautiful vista, but also it needs respect. And I can't help but think back to the days long before cars, just how treacherous it must have been to navigate lands like this. And yet here we are, sat with 9 inches of travel, a 300 horsepower V8 motor with over 420 Newton meters of torque, in Cognac Refinement, being able to enjoy it all in disproportionate amounts of hygge. I love it, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to experience Defender ownership. Now, don't get me wrong, there's Defenders and then there's JE Motorworks Defenders. These are no standard bits of kit. We've got 9 inches of lift, or should I say 4 inches of lift, 9 inches of total travel. The engine is a naturally aspirated V8, but it's completely custom built in-house by JE Motorworks. And what's custom about it? Well, for example, it has a sniper system on it. Now, that's not for shooting at anything. That is to atomize, to turn the fuel injection into a finer mist. Therefore, the burn is more efficient. Basically, creates a greater surface area for the fuel to find its way into the chambers in which to explode. And then you have the inlet manifolds, which in collaboration with a secret company out in the United States has actually smoothed out, sort of hewn the interior surface of the inlet manifolds themselves to allow for a frictionless flow of the inlet itself. There's been completely rebalanced internals, reworked heads, bored out ports. Everything about it is just one step above what you would expect from a car of this platform. And so yes, while on the outside this could very easily be on the next set of Jurassic Park, but on the inside you just get that gratifying fulfillment, particularly when the weather outside is not conducive for anything other than something like this. Now let's just talk about the relationship between that engine and this gearbox. Now this actually has the same gearbox ratios from a Defender Puma. However, the throw itself, the actuation of the shift, genuinely feels more akin to a sports car. It's got a very short throw, it's very snick-snack, it's got this very positive, reinforcing feeling. It's quite addictive. I do find myself giving it that blip look on downshifts for no reason at all other than to just massage that sound. Now, JE do an automatic box for it, but there's just something about this, the rugged nature of this car, that would lend itself well to a manual box. Now, interestingly, within the transfer box itself is an LSD, a limited slip diff. That has all been appropriately balanced and calibrated to deal with the size of the wheels and tires, which are, as I'm sure you've gathered, vast. These things are huge. as a result, the magic is actually in the engineering you don't see. The reason something of this size, with this much power, but that size wheel and that much suspension travel, is able to drive with such modern refinement is because of the black magic you don't see behind the engineering of how the gearbox integrates with the engine itself. As a result, it's just a delight. Interestingly, the suspension is perhaps stiffer than you might expect. Not on undulations, but on sort of sharper bumps, which you might find if you were, to go over an entire car or something like that. By and large, it generally smooths out the whole environment around you. And speaking of environment, this is why we're up here today in Scotland. It's just a picture I've always had in my head. It might be cliche, it's certainly iconic, but something about a rugged Defender in a rugged landscape really flicks my switches, and we couldn't think of anything more beautiful and appropriate than up here in the Highlands. And man, does this thing integrate. Now then, on the outside, while it is rugged and dangerous, it's the opposite on the inside. It's purely designed to give that sense of coziness. Now then, what about dynamics? Well, obviously this isn't exactly the last word in lap times. That's not what this car is all about. However, interestingly, it does have a set of AP racing brakes fitted to it. Now that might sound like overkill, but this is a big vehicle. It's pretty heavy. It does still have 300 horsepower, which, look, by and large, I know that's not a huge amount of horsepower, but what I'm trying to say is this big vehicle doesn't hang around. And as a result, it's one thing being able to go, but it's really important to be able to slow. And that's why this has AP racing brakes fitted all around. 6-pot at the front, 4 at the rear. The significance of why the wheels are 18-inch is actually to accommodate the brakes, not necessarily the tyres. And then there's the anti-roll bars. Once again, these are custom anti-roll bars designed to suit the driving characteristic and style of the car. And then you have the ride height. Now the ride height for me, obviously designed for extreme off-roading. We're going to try and get involved in some of that at some point, possibly not today. But for me, it's actually the enjoyment of sitting this high. When you pull up alongside a transit van, you're looking on his roof. It's crazy how big it is. Now, as a result, the road presence is one thing. That's fantastic. The visibility you get through the window of this, I mean, there's glass all around, right? But that extra ride height, talk about looking over the hedge tops. The views you get out of this are fantastic. Now, the other reason we've got this on the channel is that we're really thankful that our team is also growing, and we do end up taking a few of us to quite a few gigs, and this particular configuration is a 7-seater. So you don't have to think of it as a team car. I mean, you could build one of these as a family car and it would be awesome because it's so rugged. It's almost a shame to not have a few scuffs and scratches on it. It almost doesn't feel authentic enough, which is kind of why we want to use this thing properly. But the idea of being able to build one as a family car, if you had a big family, that's pretty baller, right? And there it is, the V8 Per. And then there's the detail, the hardware, everything in here. JE fits with billet hardware. Even the cup holder itself is hewn from a solid block of aluminium. What that means is that pretty much everything that you interact with, all of your touch points, feel quality. It just enhances the overall tactile experience. One of the iconic features of a classic Defender is, of course, the outboard hinges. Now, those aren't any normal hinges on a JE Defender. No, sir, they are also billet, anodized to whatever color you might want to match the personality of your car. But it's a car that, for me, is sort of greater than the sum of its parts. And boy, has this thing got some parts. I'll drop a link in the description below to one of the build videos because we documented some of the build journey of this car. The parts that went into it, they're just beautiful. They're the kind of components that you'd be happy leaving on your desk as a beautiful paperweight. They're everywhere. Actually, for all of its V8 prowess, vast amounts of torque and evil looks, one of the things that I enjoy most about this car is actually how it can, when you want it to, slow the world down. You're not grabbing it by the scruff of its neck and driving it 10/10. It's not what it's about. Its ethos is entirely different. And there's something about the authenticity of this classic edition. Albeit definitely a resto mod, it's still a Defender. It's still a 110, and it still has that that friendly global appeal of take you anywhere in safety, bring the adversity, and just make you feel great. So, the adventure is very much just beginning with THOR. If you're big into your Defenders, be sure to like and subscribe. And when you subscribe, hit the little bell so you know when new THOR content goes live. Thanks for watching. I shall see you next time. Ciao!